Good afternoon and thanks for joining today's webinar, GP Tips and Tricks Using Credit Cards in Dynamics GP. I'm Dee Bowers and I'll be your moderator. Before we jump into the webinar, I'm going to briefly go over how to use the webinar pane. So to the right of your monitor you should see an orange arrow. If you click that arrow, you'll be able to toggle the webinar tray between the open and closed position. You should also see a small chat window. Please feel free to enter in your questions throughout the presentation using this chat console. So now's a great time to also double check your audio settings. So on the GoToWebinar console, you should see an area for audio settings. If you're calling in on your telephone, please make sure you've selected the Use Telephone option. Alternatively, if you're using your computer speakers, please make sure you've selected the Use Mic and Speakers option. Additionally, I'd like to note that this webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending out a link to the recording and the slide deck within 48 hours. So just check your email if you'd like to go ahead and revisit this webinar later on. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce today's presenters. First, we have Megan Fall, a senior consultant with our Dynamics GP practice here at Armanino. Megan has over 6 years of experience implementing and supporting Dynamics GP. We also have Sahar Ahmed. Sahar is a senior consultant within our Microsoft Dynamics GP practice and has years of experience supporting and implementing Microsoft Dynamics GP. So it's great to have you both here, and with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Megan.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just to go over briefly the agenda for our webinar, we're going to talk about how to set up the credit cards in Dynamics GP, and then we're going to go through how to use the credit cards in payables, and then how to use them in receivables, because it does work differently. Then we are going to talk about some tips and tricks about when using credit cards, just things to keep in mind as you go through the process. Then I will turn it over to Sahar for a demonstration, and we'll answer any questions at the end. So to start things off, how to set up credit cards in GP. So credit card setup is a company setting. You go to the Administration tab, and under Setup and Company is a link for credit cards. Here you're going to enter a name for the credit card, for example, Amex or Visa. And then you're going to select whether or not this is accepted from customers, which means it's going to be used in AR, or if it's going to be used by the company, which means that it will be used in AP to pay off your vendors. When you make a selection, it's going to either ask you to enter a checkbook ID in reference to the credit card, or it's going to ask you for an account number. This is a GL account number, which you would set up, and that would be a direct link to the credit card as well. The next slide is going to explain a little bit more on the differences between these options. So when you select bank card, it will associate the credit card with the checkbook, and it will update it by adding vouchers or receipts to the checkbook, and you would have to go through a reconciliation process in the bank module just as if it was a normal checkbook. So that's why it kind of works basically the same way as when you're using the bank module normally. So just think bank card equals checkbook. Then when you have the option of a charge card, which associates the credit card directly to a GL account, and it bypasses the bank module. This is something that you would normally do if your credit card fees are taken out of each individual transaction, and therefore it needs to be at the GL account level and not at a bank level. So for the bank card, that would be if your credit card is going to take a percentage out of your total for the month and charge you once a month rather than off of each individual transaction. So that's easier to maintain in the bank module, and you would just enter yourself a bank transaction once a month to record the credit card fees, and that would be how you'd handle it in the bank module. So it's kind of confusing. I completely understand. So if you're setting this up and you have questions about which option is the best one for you, that would be a great thing to just send Sahar or myself an email and ask us the question. We'd be happy to look at your particular scenario to determine which option is best for you. Okay, so next we're going to go through how you use credit cards in the payables module. Now, payables is a little bit interesting, and so a graphic is a great way to start things off. So the first step is going to be entering your payables invoice just as normal. It's exactly the same. Then the difference happens that you're going to pay off that invoice through a manual payment instead of through a check run, and you're going to select the credit card option. So that pays off the invoice. You apply as normal, but when you select the credit card, it is going to be associated with a vendor, and it automatically generates a new invoice for the credit card vendor, which you would then pay off during a check run as a normal check. So you'll see this during the demonstration again, but we wanted to lay it out in kind of a visual way because it is a little bit confusing. So you do actually end up with two invoices, and you'll be paying it off twice. So it's very much how it normally happens in day-to-day life. You pay using the credit card, and then you end up having to pay the credit card off. So it's two transactions in place of one. So this just goes through in a little bit more detail to show you each of the different steps that you're going to be taking. So the first step, as we mentioned, is just normal invoice. Step 2 is your manual payment. So this is the manual payment screen, and you're going to enter it as normal, but you'll see in the middle there under payment method, it selects the credit card. And in this case, it's an American Charge is GP's pretend credit card vendor, and that's off to the right-hand side of the payment method. So you'd enter a document number. You can use like a CC at the beginning of the document numbers if you want to specify and make it easy for yourself to identify credit cards. And then you enter your amount and you apply it as per usual. So this clears the original transaction. When you post this, it's going to automatically generate a new credit card invoice to that vendor, as we'll see on the next slide. So this slide shows you a picture of the transaction inquiry for the credit card vendor. So American Charge is the credit card vendor, and you'll see highlighted that is the same invoice or a duplicate of the invoice that we just paid off. But this is specific to that vendor. So on your next check run, you would include American Charge in your check run, and that invoice would be paid off through the credit card or through the check run process. Okay, so that's payables. Receivables is a little bit simpler. Receivables just uses the credit card in place of cash or check by your customers. So the process is fairly straightforward. You just have your normal AR invoice, and then when you go to generate your cash receipt, you select the payment type of credit card. You're going to select the credit card ID and just enter the rest of the information as normal. So again, you're just going to apply it to the invoice and process as a normal payment. The receipt will then, and this is where checking that bank card versus check card comes into play. If you have it as a bank card, the receipt will then show up on your checkbook that's assigned to the credit card, so that you would then go through a regular checkbook bank rec as usual. So the tips when you're dealing with credit cards. So here's a scenario for you. Most people have at least one corporate credit card that they use in their company. If you have multiple individuals who will be using corporate credit cards, you have two options. You can either just create a single credit card that everyone uses. So it's a generic GP credit card. So each person might have their own Amex, but you're just going to create one called Amex, and then that's going to have one vendor that you pay off all at once for whoever does any kind of credit card payments through GP. So that means that when it flows through the bank, you're going to have one checkbook to reconcile, and so if you get 4 statements from 4 different users, you then have to match them together manually and go through it on your bank rec. The other option is you can create individualized credit cards in GP. So same scenario, same way of setting it up, except you would say Amex Beth, Amex Joe, Amex Mark, and each person's credit card is specific to them. So that means when you're going through payables and you're entering transactions on different purchases that have been made, you need to be very specific about understanding who made this charge. So this becomes a reconcile issue if you have people exchanging cards or giving cards to other people. So like if Joe forgot his and Beth makes the payment, well, who do you charge that to? Whose account does that go to? Because the bank thinks it's on Beth, but your internal process might think it's Joe. So you have to be very consistent and very strict about who uses whose Amex or who uses whose corporate card if you're going to do the individually identifiable cards. This does make life much easier on the reconciliation process at the bank level, because you have one statement that you get in the mail or online and you compare it to one checkbook. So each person's credit card has its own checkbook, and it makes life a little easier on the reconcile process. But it's possible that things could get a little messy on the payable side of things. So just something to keep in mind. Another tip is that each credit card is linked to a checkbook, as we just mentioned. So you do want to treat it like a checkbook, and you want to do the monthly reconciles just like normal so that you keep on top of things and you make sure that your receipts and your withdrawals look proper. GP can be set up, so this is switching to the AR side now. The GP can be set up to store credit card numbers for customers, but you do need to maintain that information on the customer card in receivables. So if their card is about to expire, it's no longer going to be usable, and you would have to go in and update that before you could continue processing credit cards. There are also a lot of third parties that revolve around using credit cards in GP, some on the payable side, a lot on the receivable side. So if you're in e-commerce or you're thinking about having some kind of an add-on for helping with your credit card processing, just let us know, contact us. We'd be more than happy to get someone to run through the pros and cons and which options there are out there for you. Okay. And we should be at our demo. Yes. Okay, so we're going to transition now and give you over to Seher, who's going to take us through some of this in more detail.
Okay, so first we're going to go ahead and take a look at the credit card setup. We're going to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, Company, Credit Cards. We'll take a look at one of the credit cards that I already have set up, which is Visa. So for this one, I have it as just a generic credit card. I have it for my receivable side and my payable side. I have bank card selected as one of the options. Just like Megan had mentioned earlier, this option for bank card is going to associate the credit card with the checkbook in GP. Had I selected charge card, it would have associated it to a GL account. I'm going to be also using it for the company. So for this, I have to associate a vendor. So for each credit card, I have to go ahead and set up a vendor ID. So if I go ahead and click on vendor ID and go to vendor maintenance, I just want to give you a general overview. The credit card vendor is going to be set up just like any other vendor would be set up. However, there's one additional step, and later I will show you the distributions where there might be an issue. But on the account side, you do want to make sure that you have an accounts payable set up. The cash is grayed out because, again, it's coming from the checkbook. So that's why the cash account is grayed out, but you do need to have an accounts payable listed on the vendor side. So let's go ahead and close that up. And again, this wraps up just the credit card setup. So let's go ahead and move forward with a payables invoice that's already been entered. So let's take a look at that first. If I go to transactions, purchasing, transaction entry, go ahead and pull up the one I have already entered. Okay, for this one, it's just like a normal invoice. The only thing is under document number, I changed it just a bit because on the payment side, I will be entering the same document number that I have listed here. It's just easier when it comes to tying out those transactions. So the distributions are normal. We have we're debiting the purchasing and we're crediting our payable side. So I'll go ahead and post this batch And once this is posted, we'll go ahead and move forward with our manual payment. We'll just go ahead and cancel those through. Okay, so now to go ahead and create a manual payment in which we will be charging the credit card, if we go to purchasing and then manual payments, I'll go ahead and take the default payment number. I'll go ahead and select the vendor ID that was selected for that invoice. For the payment method, I'll go ahead and click on credit card and I will select the Visa credit card. For document number, this is the one that I want to update. On the invoice, you saw that it was listed as a date and then the vendor ID. So I'm going to go ahead and just update that here as well. It'll just be easier again to look at this in an inquiry screen. Oops. Okay, and the amount for that was $250. And I just want to go ahead and let you guys see the distributions on this. So you'll notice that even though it shows the cash account, we have the payables account showing that was on that credit card's vendor. So this is coming from that option that I showed you where the accounts were listed for that vendor setup. So what's happening here is that the cash type distribution is recording the payment, but since it was made with the credit card and not cash, it's crediting the accounts payable. So this will be coming again from the account payable that was set up on the credit card vendor. The pay distribution is recording the payment to the original vendor, which was that Aaron Fitz invoice. So basically this transaction is going to move the liability from Aaron Fitz to Visa. So we'll go ahead and select OK, and then I'll go ahead and apply that to my invoice. And we'll go ahead and post that. Okay, we'll cancel through the reports. And then let's go ahead and take a look at both of those vendors in an inquiry screen. So first we'll take a look at the Aaron Fitz vendor. Okay, so we see that both the invoice and the payment are historical. What that did was the credit card paid off that invoice, and so the original vendor is now done with. But now if we take a look at Visa, Visa is now going to have an open invoice. So let's take a look at that. So right here we can see an open invoice now for Visa. This will be cleared out during the select checks run, and the good thing about this is if we look at the document number that was listed, it just makes it easier when you're in the select checks edit checks window to go ahead and actually select off those transactions, just because we have a certain method that we're using for the document number. So you don't have to do this, but again, it makes the process a lot easier. Okay, to move forward with the receivable side, let's go to transactions, sales, transaction entry, and I'm going to go ahead and show you an invoice that I went ahead and started. So it's just like any other normal invoice. The only thing here is that you'll notice that once you enter in the amount, it'll add in the tax, and then I'll go ahead and post the cash receipt for that full amount. So I'm going to go ahead and post this invoice because it's already in a batch. Let me actually post it from the batch window. So we go to transaction, sales, and then receivables batches. And then we'll go ahead and cancel through those. So now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and enter a cash receipt. So if we go to transactions, sales, cash receipts, And here I'm going to select the customer ID again, Aaron Fitz. And then we'll go ahead and select credit card. And here I'm going to actually go ahead and click on Visa. I'm going to go back and enter that amount that was there. It was $8.56. Okay, so we have our credit card that is going to be paying off this customer, and I'm going to go ahead and go to apply. And I'm going to go ahead and apply that original invoice. And then I'll go ahead and post. So that is a really easy overview of how to go ahead and enter a credit card in GP, how to process a manual payment and apply it to an invoice by moving the liability from the original vendor to the credit card vendor. And then we also went over cash receipts. And so now I'm going to turn it over to questions.
Okay, great. So it looks like we had a few come in. The first one was, which version of GP are you referring to? Or does it apply to all versions?
Okay, so the credit card process does work in all of the current versions of GP. It's not specific to any particular one. I've personally used it in 9, 10, 2010, 13, and 15, or 2015. So it does work in pretty much all of the GP versions. It doesn't mean that you don't have maybe some third party or something is not enabled. So if you're having an issue where you're not seeing credit cards as an option, then just reach out to us and we can take a look and see if there's something that's either not set up properly or that is not letting you use credit cards. Our demo is in GP 2013 R2, so that's the version that we're demoing on. Okay.
So it looks like the next one we have here is, can you enter the manual payment from your invoice entry screen? And that was back when we were on the lower right side of the screen with the screenshot there.
Yes, so what they're referring to is when you go and you enter an invoice in either the receivables transaction entry window or the payables transaction entry window, you have payment method options in the lower right-hand side. One of them is cash, one of them is check, and one of them is credit card. So yes, you can enter it there. That takes a very generic version, so if you want to change anything like the document number and such, we generally recommend just doing the manual payment on its own separately, but you absolutely can do it that way. It is available and a viable option, yes.
Okay, good question. So we have a few more here. Do you have to enter, post, and manually pay the invoice before you enter the next invoice?
No, you can certainly enter all of your invoices for the day at once, and then you can have someone else do manual payments just as things come along. It doesn't have to be one invoice, pay that off, second invoice, pay that off. You can certainly do them in batches and chunks. Yeah. And just, I noticed there's one question that got a little lost. It says, can we use integration with this? So if you're asking, can we import cash receipts or can we import manual payments using a credit card type, the answer is yes, you can, because it's just a payment method type. So on your integration, you would just have to, and we can show you how to do this too if you need us to. We can show you how to just simply make sure that the type is selected on your integration so that it pulls as a credit card. So that can be made to work. It is easier doing the credit card version that goes directly to the GL, because then it's just going to pull the default account number, whereas if you're using the bank card type where you have to specify the, which one it is, it can get a little, you have to make sure that you have the right number of columns and that they're appropriately mapped. So it can get a little bit more difficult, but we can certainly walk you through how to do that if you needed to.
Okay, and then for the AP portion of the bank card credit card, how would you enter process multiple invoices?
How would you process multiple invoices? I'm not quite sure that I understand exactly what you're asking. You can simply, so when you're in payables, you can stay on the invoice or the transaction entry window as long as you need. You enter one, save, and then you enter the second one and click save, and you keep going until you're done with your invoices, and then you could switch to your manual payments, and you would just enter as many manual payments as you need. And so if you've got one giant credit card payment that you're paying off 4 or 5 invoices, then you just simply put the manual payment, credit card manual payment in for the total amount, and then you would simply use the apply window to apply it to all of the multiple invoices that you're trying to pay off at one time. So you can do one payment for multiple invoices, definitely.
Okay, and so another one is you entered transactions without setting up a batch. This causes problems for us. Is that normal?
You entered transactions. Oh, we had already set up the batch. That was a batch. She had already created that batch ahead of time just to reduce one less step for the demonstration purposes. So there is a setting that you can use to allow transactions to post directly from the transaction entry window rather than forcing it to use a batch. And again, if you have a particular third party or scenario that's making it maybe a little less easy to use that setting, that might be why you have it set up that way. But we do always recommend that using batches is a better option than just posting directly from the transaction entry. It's a good safety feature.
Okay, and so I'm not quite sure, this question might be related to the last one, but is there a way to enter multiple credit card transactions at once?
So again, you can stay on the manual payments window and just enter as many transactions as you need before moving on to the next thing. And as soon as you just simply enter one, save, enter one, save again. And as soon as you're done and you exit the window, that's when it'll print those reports. So those reports wait until the end. If you're asking about the importing multiple transactions at once, that is also, like we said before, something that you can do. It just takes a little bit more setup.
Okay, and then we are using a third-party credit card system. How can we save the credit card on the account for AR?
That entirely depends on which third-party credit card system you're using. Some of them bypass the AR setup or the customer setup entirely and effectively just take over for AR, and they do it entirely outside the system. And some of them utilize a little bit of what GP has set up and then just add on to it. So it really depends on your system. So if you want to send us an email after this webinar, Sahara and my email addresses will be on the last slide, and just let us know a little bit more about your particular third party and your scenario, and we can help you individually on that one.
Okay, so we have another one here about would you go over the process for voiding a credit card transaction?
Okay, so the voiding a credit card transaction depends on which module you're in. If you're in, and it's the same process that you use to void any payment transaction in either AR or AP. So for AR, if you've already fully applied and moved everything to history, you can't void it. You have to go through another scenario to take it out of history and all that kind of stuff in order to void. So for payable side, you just simply go to either the void historical document window if it's already been applied, and then you can select your payment and void there. Or if it's not been applied, then you go to the void unapplied or void open transaction window, and that's where you can find your transaction. So it's the same process as others. It's not any different. Okay, let's see.
Okay, so we have a number of more questions that came in here. Megan, do you want to look through and see which ones we might need to take offline, but which other ones might apply to the whole group?
Let's see. Wow, there's a lot that are getting more and more detailed. Okay, so the general one that came through is about how to set up a credit card as a checkbook. So you have to create your checkbook first. So if you have a Visa checkbook, then you have to create that in the financials first to create your checkbook, and then you create your credit card as Visa, and you assign it when you select bank card to the particular checkbook that's going to be in use. So that's how you would set that up. Again, if you need more detail, then just let us know through an email, and we can get you, we can get a training session set up. So I think the rest, though, would be best answered individually afterwards, because they are getting more and more detailed in the scenarios that they're asking.
Okay, perfect. So if you didn't get your question answered, we'll go ahead and take those offline. We have your email address. If you have any more that come up, please make sure you reach out to Megan or Sahar directly. We have their email right up on the screen right now. So again, we'll be getting back in touch with anybody whose question didn't get answered. But thank you again for joining us today for this webinar. As you exit, there's going to be a quick survey. If you could just take a moment and let us know how we're doing, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a good one.